Today I'm going to show you how I took my young horse from this to this in no time at all and how you can too, so stick with me. Hello everyone, so before we get started I just wanted to take a look at what not to do when desensitizing your horse. So this guy actually started off doing all the right things like letting the horse examine the scary object, moving it away from the horse, etc. But then, in just less than half an hour, he's doing this. What you just saw there is a method called flooding, which means imposing a fearful stimuli upon the animal until he stops reacting. And the danger of this is that while it might seem effective on the surface, the horse didn't actually come to terms with the object on its own when he was ready, but rather when he had to. This essentially creates a bad memory he will never forget that can cause him to react dangerously in the future. So please, 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 don't do this. And now we can get down to the nitty-gritty of how to help your horse accept any spooky object without causing trauma or bad memories. So here we have a Black Frisian Cross Welsh D yearling gelding who is very possibly seeing the whip for the first time. So I'm just really trying to get a feel for where he stands and what we will have to overcome. As you can see, he's doing very well and he's pretty chilled out about the whole thing. Now, that would have been a really great start, except a few days later we had a little accident that kind of involved him freaking out while I was holding the whip in my hand, which put us all the way back to zero. While this was a mistake I would have much rather avoided, I guess the bright side is that you get to see the entire process from start to finish. So here we go. The purpose of this first session was to just get him used to the presence of the whip, and you can do this with any scary object. As you can see, he's quite nervous about me holding the whip, so I'm just going to put it on the ground to make it less intimidating and gently ask him to step over it. With this, I'm hoping to make him feel superior to the object and help him realize that it poses no threat to him. We do this a few times in walk and trot, and I use positive reinforcement to reward his best attempts. He's still very aware of the whip and tries to avoid it sometimes, but overall I think we did very well. In the next step, I'm just gonna slightly raise the whip from the ground and reward him for standing still and taking interest in it. Finally, we repeat the exercises from the beginning and finish off with getting him to stand with the whip between his front and hind legs. On the next session we did basically the same thing, walking, trotting and standing over the whip on the ground. Dream was a bit reluctant in the beginning, but he became more and more confident towards the end. I should say that these sessions never last longer than 10 minutes and are about a week apart. This is especially important when working with young horses as they get distracted very easily, so less is definitely more in this case. And leaving some time between the sessions just really helps them process and consolidate the information. At the end of lesson 2, we go one step further when I pick up the whip and move it away from Dream, asking him to follow me on a loose rope. This is a key step whenever you're desensitizing a horse because in their mind, if something is moving away from them, then it can't be much of a threat. And this really helps them realize that, oh, this is not a big deal after all. The third day started the same, revisioning the beginning. Now, I appreciate that you totally don't see where the whip is, but it is right there, trust me. This time I asked my partner to be the moving whip, so I can easily watch Dream's reactions and reward him when he's done the right thing. I think it worked quite well, to be honest. Lesson 4 is mostly the same stuff, so I'm just really going for reinforcing what we've learned so far with these repetitions and give him time to grow more confident. At the end, we go one tiny step further when I asked him to stand side by side with the raised whip. You can see that he instantly becomes more skittish, which just indicates that he's not ready for anything big yet, and that's fine. Lesson 5. We're getting pretty good at the basics now. Oh, I love rewatching these old videos because you can really see him grow, like he's already a bit bigger and better muscle than compared to how scrawny he looked at the beginning. So today we're just practicing standing still with the whip hanging over him. I do wish I did this a bit differently, like I just keep holding the whip up regardless whether he's moving or not. I should have lowered it every time he stopped moving because timing like that is just so important. And this is where I switched to 4K filming and oh, I just love how detailed everything is. Look at that sand! It's astonishing! Anyway, Dream is now standing nicely next to the whip, so I didn't hold back on the treats and voila! He's taking more and more interest in it. So I thought it was time to make the next baby step and let go of the lash so it can hang loosely in the air. Now, and only now, are we at the very same stage as before our little accident. Phew! Before we move on, I just want to point out this reaction here. So this relates to when I talked about flooding in the beginning of this video. So instead of forcing the whip onto him until he stops moving, I retreat instead and just let him examine the whip for minutes and minutes and minutes with a big reward at the end. Lesson 7. So same thing again, just touching him with the whip and lifting off as soon as he stops moving. By now, you must be thinking, damn, if all of these sessions are 1 week apart, then it must have been months since the first lesson. Didn't you say that we can achieve this in no time? You are absolutely right. But don't forget that almost all of these sessions are under 10 minutes long, and if we add them all up, the total comes to about 2 hours. I just chose to do it this way because of my horse's age and inexperience, but it's up to you how you go about it. You know, your horse might be at a stage where you can do a lot more in one session, but still, condensing all of this into a one-time half-an-hour session is just not right. Here you can see that he's still not ready for the whip to be rolled out, so I'm just trying to push his boundaries a little bit by running it through his body. Nope, still no. That's okay, maybe next time. Keep in mind that I still go through all the exercises in every session, in case we need to take a step back. God, he's got such a pot belly on this one. Here, he finally mustered up the courage to stand still while I stroke him with the whiplash. Note that I ask very little at this stage and instantly release and reward as soon as he does it. We always end the session when things are going well, as that can be a reward in itself. He's really getting there on this one, there is not long left to go. Oh, and before I forget, you must work symmetrically whenever you're desensitizing your horse. This is more of a general rule of thumb with horses, really. Because their eyes are so far apart, there's a weak connection in the brain between what they see on the two sides. So it's best practice to train them equally on the right and left side as much as possible. Lesson 12, so close to the end. Here I'm slowly increasing the pressure by asking him to stand longer and longer under the whip. And other than the occasional flinching, he did exactly as he was told. Plus, we don't quite want to discourage every reaction to the whip because then it loses its value as a training tool. So you just gotta find that balance and feel for what your horse needs. Finally, we are at the last session and the footage just speaks for itself really. Dream is so confident in himself, he's even bored like, oh, is that what we're doing today? It's just lovely to see really. And this is something he will never forget. He will never freak out of the whip ever again, so long as it's used correctly of course and not for intimidation. So to sum up, the top tips for desensitizing your horse to any spooky object are as follows. Take your time. Don't rush the process and avoid flooding at all costs. Less is often more. Do shorter sessions with some time in between. Encourage your horse to approach and explore the object first. Get your horse to follow or chase the object. Do one tiny step at a time. Ask little, reward big. Instantly drop the pressure when your horse responds correctly. Timing is key here, guys. Work symmetrically. Desensitize both sides before moving on. And finally, always finish on a high note. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please... You know what? Screw that! If you watched this entire video till the end, that is already more than enough to support my channel. So thank you so much for joining me today. At some point in the future, I will make a big desensitization video that will include plastic bags, umbrellas, tarps, motorbikes, balloons, and who knows what else. So if you're interested in something like that, let me know in the comments below. Until then, ride smart, guys!